Let's just jump right into our first panel. We all know how important it is to disrupt the education industry, and very few have done it quite as successfully or aggressively as our next panelist. So please welcome Daphne Koller from Coursera and our moderator, Frederic Lardinois. I'm going to wake up. Frederic Lardinois from TechCrunch. Clap it out. Frederic.
Thank you. Comfy cushions here. Oh, it's still cold out here, isn't it? So we'll have Jordan ask for heating again afterwards. First, a question for the audience before we get started. How many of you have taken an online course with a MOOC or Codecademy or anything like that? That's quite a few of you. How many of you finished that course? All right, you guys are good. You're better than average, I think. What's the last class you've taken?
The entrepreneurship class from University of Maryland.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So to get... Whoa.
Well, okay.
All right, let's try that again. To get started, I want to talk a little bit about the people who have taken your classes. You guys have been doing this for a good 2 years now?
Yep.
A little bit longer. You started in 2012. Who is taking Coursera classes today?
You know, the range is remarkable. We have about a third of our audiences in the US, but 2/3 are outside the US. 1/3 are in developed countries, and 1/3 are in the developing world, which is a statistic that we're very proud of. Age range is all the way from 13 to 90. With the median, if you had to pick a profile, it would be people like yourselves, people in the 30s who are looking to learn a new skill or expand their minds.
Why are they coming to you?
Because I think there's, okay, it's not, okay. They're coming to us because we have an amazing range of educational offerings from the world's best universities. And that kind of education for most people around the world has been nothing but a dream, and now they actually have the opportunity to get access to it.
One of the criticisms I often hear is a lot of people, we saw it here in the audience a little bit, a lot of people come to your classes, look at them. Not a lot of people finish them necessarily, and we've heard a lot about that in the last year or so especially. Yeah. Not just with Coursera, but similar classes as well. What's your reaction to that?
So if you look at the statistics, it's true that of the people who click the enroll button on the website, about 5% on average complete the class. I think it's important to keep in mind that of the people who click the enroll button, half of them don't even show up on the first day of class because they've, 2 months have passed and they're now doing something else. Half of the ones that do show up look at the first lecture and realize that this isn't what they thought they were signing up for. I've heard from one of our learners that he thought that the astrobiology class was going to be about UFOs, and it turns out it's not.
Did you ever teach a class about UFOs?
Well, if one of our university partners wanted to offer such a class, I'm not sure that's likely in the near future. And then of the ones that do show up, about half of them are in it just to look at it like a documentary, which means they are looking at the videos but not actually trying to do the work. Of the ones that meaningfully intend to take the class, about 70% complete.
Are you okay with that?
I think 70% is a number we can strive to improve, and we are. There are a number of things that we're doing, for example, by moving to a more self-paced model, which we've now done in 4 of our classes. It's encouraging people to fit this into their schedule in a way that a more rigid, constrained approach that works for college students might not accommodate, and I think that's going to increase our completion stats. So we can strive to improve it, but 70% is not bad for any online activity. And for those people who are much more serious about this and are in it to get a credential, which costs, I think, $50 on average across our courses, of those, the completion numbers are considerably higher. So 80–90% is typical in many classes.
What about the earlier part of that funnel, the 100,000 to 50,000? What can you do there to maybe get some, because in the end you are a for-profit organization, you probably do want more people to come through the funnel.
I think regardless of whether we're for-profit or otherwise, we want to get the education out to as large a number of people as possible. The on-demand model, the self-paced model that we're now trying out allows people to start the class as soon as they enroll, as opposed to wait a month or 2 months or 6 months for it to begin. And we find that the number of people who enroll for a class within a week of its start time are about twice as likely to complete as the people who enroll for a class a month or 2 before it begins. And so I think that's going to be a huge influencer on our completion statistics.
Is that going to be something you're going to roll out wider across more classes? Because right now, I sign up and this class starts on September 21st or something like that. But
yeah, that's exactly right, and that's not something that works for a lot of our learners because they want people are used to the on-demand model when they watch movies or when they listen to music, and I think in this day and age, that's a model that's much more appropriate, and so I think we're going to roll it out in a much larger number of our courses over time.
what are you doing to foster that community too? Because my feeling has always been learning is a lot about community, and online, that's a little bit different, right?
So one of the things that I think we've been surprised at is the extent to which community develops in these online courses. It's a very exciting community because it's very diverse. You have people from all age groups, you have people with different experience levels, working professionals, along with complete novices, and they help each other. So the ones who are more expert are much more are likely to come in and help the ones who are struggling, and it's a real sense of excitement around that.
If you're moving to this more self-paced model, though, what changes there?
I think we can create a community even in a self-paced model. You can think of it as a way of creating a flash cohort in the same way that you have a flash mob. It doesn't really matter when you have 50,000 learners whether they all started at the same time. What matters is that you have 5,000 who are at the same module that you are, so that you have people to communicate with and ask questions with. So some of them might have begun more recently, others might have been at it longer, but as long as there's people for you to talk to, it feels exciting.
What about the classes themselves? So just to switch gears a little bit. What are some of the popular classes, the most popular classes you're teaching, and which ones are not popular?
We have a range of classes. I think our biggest class so far has been a social psychology class from Wesleyan University, which is a really exciting class because its final project is called A Day of Compassion, and it allows people to really engage in a meaningful way with their community. So last year's grand prize winner is a physician from India called Balesh Jindal, who wanted to do something about the problem of sexual violence against girls in India, and went to a local girls' school, found dozens of cases of girls who had been victims of sexual violence, and is now offering them pro bono consulting in her clinic. So it's a really exciting experiential class. The second most popular class has been our Android class, which is teaching people to develop Android apps. And then I think the third one has been, I'm not sure if I'm getting the ranking exactly right, but one of our most popular recent classes has been called Learning to Learn from UC San Diego, that teaches people basic learning skills. So we have a really interesting diversity of classes, even at the most popular end of the spectrum. They're not all just computer science or business courses.
I noticed you didn't ask the part about the unpopular classes, but...
I can answer that. I mean, our lowest enrollment classes are courses that are taught in languages other than English, okay, and they reach a narrower audience, but we're very proud of having French language courses from some of our, say, Swiss schools that are aimed at learners in sub-Saharan Africa. And yes, that they don't have a lot of access down there, so the classes have only 8,000 or 9,000 learners, which is, you know, low on our end, but I'm very proud of those classes.
Those are good classes,
yeah,
too, absolutely. Is there a difference between what you're doing in the science, the hard sciences, and the humanities classes?
I think one of the biggest revelations in this new generation of online courses has been the extent to which the community allows you to offer courses across a much broader diversity of disciplines than has previously been thought can be done in an online format, and certainly in a scalable format. I mean, we were surprised at how peer grading, for example, which allows learners to provide meaningful feedback on the work of other learners, has opened the door to project-based experiential courses that allow both really high-end engineering and science classes to be offered, but also the courses in the humanities and social sciences.
Because in the early days, you mostly offered multiple choice tests, I think, right?
I think the very first classes were multiple choice and programming assignments, but we offered our first humanities course in May and June of 2012, and we were so struck by the success of that, that those classes are now about half of our offerings.
Okay. One of the topics I've been following a lot is language learning online.
Yeah.
And you don't have all that much to offer there right now, right? What's the
Not
status
very
of
much.
that?
We have, I think, 3 or 4 writing courses that teach people how to write effectively in English, how to write effectively in Spanish. We have a class coming up on Chinese for beginners offered by, I think, Peking University. We have a class on introductory Spanish, but it's, you know, it's not a topic that is a traditional college course, and so it's not something that has been a huge offering on our platform.
Is it also something where the lecture-based format that you mostly focus on just doesn't work as well? Or?
I think it's partially that, and partially that in order to do effective language learning, you need some special purpose assessments and exercises to help people practice the language, and we haven't put a lot of effort on developing special purpose assignments for any course category, including language.
What about these specialization tracks you've been offering for, what about the last year or so, I think? It's a group of classes that together make up a specialization in computer security or a topic like that. So this is something that we started to offer in January of this year, so it's very new. And it's, as you said, Frederic, it's a combination, it's a series of classes that builds on each other, and it culminates in one of those experiential capstone projects that really help the learners put the skills that they learned to work in the context of a real-world problem. So our 2 biggest blockbusters in that area right now are in data science from Johns Hopkins and in Android development from Maryland and Vanderbilt. There's one coming up in cybersecurity and a whole bunch of those coming up. And what we clearly see is that the credential that the students earn as taking those classes is incredibly valuable to them in the workplace. If you complete the data science specialization from Johns Hopkins, you get a job as a data scientist. And so we have been able to really create a new credential for the 21st century. It's larger than a single course, and so provides a much more meaningful unit of learning, but is smaller than the kind of degree that many people just don't have time for in their busy schedule. It's a job for data scientists anywhere right now, I think, right?
And Android developers and cybersecurity experts. I mean, those jobs, those people are worth their weight in gold these days.
Well, you did bring up the topic of the credential and how much the credential is worth. Are you seeing any changes there? Because maybe 2 years ago, people would have said, oh, it's online education, it's for-profit too, and these days with the student loan issues and just for-profit classes.
I would remind us that we're not a for-profit education company, we're a for-profit technology company. Okay. Our courses are provided by the world's best universities, or by and large non-profit institutions of the highest academic credentials. The credentials are becoming much more valued in the workplace. So first of all, we see that 70% of our learners are saying that they're going to post the credential on their LinkedIn profile or their resume. We've also been told by a large number of employers that they value their credentials. One of our partners, Duke University, did a survey among employers in North Carolina, a very broad diversity of employers, not just in the tech space. And what we see is that across sectors, 60 to 70% of employers say that they would value MOOC credential as an important factor in deciding who to interview and possibly even who to hire.
That's very different from just a year ago, probably.
Conversion rates among learners to say, we want this credential because it's valuable, have more than doubled in the last year.
Wow. Wow. What does all of this mean for the universities? Because you are partnering with them, and it seems like how are they reacting to all of this?
So first, I think we're seeing that many universities recognize that what we're doing is not cannibalizing their existing market, their existing student base, but rather opening up a new market to them. The vast majority of our learners, as I said, are not college students. They are people who have completed any type of formal education they're likely to get. They're in the workplace, are looking to reskill themselves into things that in many cases didn't exist when they went to school 15 years ago. And this is a way for some of the world's top universities to reach out into this untapped market of people who are really hungry for education. What I think we're going to do for universities, and I think what they're hoping we will do for them, is transform the way they teach. We're going to be a catalyst for change that allows them to move away from the boring old lecture type teaching to something that is much more experiential in the classroom. So that instead of coming into the classroom and just hearing the professor talk, you're going to get that content delivery outside the classroom and come in for something that is much more interactive and engaging and teaches you the 21st century skills that we're so often told by employers we don't do a particularly good job of teaching.
That does change the role of the professor quite a bit, though, too, right? How are they reacting to this?
Well, I think that's a really good question. Some professors are embracing this because they see this as an opportunity to engage in teaching as they hoped it would be, which is a dialogue with their learners. And others who are more accustomed to the professorial act of professing are scared by this transformation because they've developed a skill in that form of teaching, and now they have to learn a whole new set of skills. But I think it's really important that we learn that because all of the data that is being gathered is showing that this new form of teaching, this flipped classroom as it's come to be called, or blended learning, is considerably more effective than lecture format, especially for the learners, for the students who come in with the least amount of preparation. So students who were failing in the traditional lecture-based classroom are now successfully completing in the blended learning format, and I think that's so important to give these students a chance.
Most students have probably figured that out after their first semester in college already, right? That lectures don't work all that well.
Indeed. We're hearing from a lot of our professors that even when their own lecture isn't recorded, half the students are not showing up. And certainly when the lecture is recorded or when there is an alternative from another instructor, even at another university, the attendance rates drop considerably. But if you change what you're doing in the classroom to something that provides a real value to students in teaching them a skill that is not as easily obtained online, they come.
Do you see a future then where I would be taking your lecture class online and then just do my labs at the university or something like that?
Labs, discussion groups, debate, working on projects. I think schools are going to end up creating a whole new set of value-added extensions on core curriculum, volunteer opportunities, internships, and many other things that provide considerable value to students.
With your classes, you've created at least a kind of a subclass of teacher stars almost in your system, right? It's an interesting development for teachers, I think, and professors who are used to just teaching to 20 students maybe or something.
Most professors who teach a MOOC tell us that, first of all, it was an incredible amount of work, a whole lot more work than they expected, but also the most rewarding teaching experience that they've ever had, because it teaches them things about their discipline that they didn't know before. By interacting, if you're a professor teaching sustainability and you're interacting with students from Nigeria to Bangladesh to Beijing, it teaches you stuff about your own discipline in terms of different perspectives. And they find that incredibly exciting, not just because of the reach and the visibility, but because of the enrichment that they get from it.
What does it mean for the teacher who's not that exciting as a lecturer?
I think we're going to see a lot of people develop skills for this new form of teaching, which is a very different type of teaching than standing and lecturing. Even people who aren't naturally charismatic on a stage can do really well because it feels more like an intimate conversation with the student.
Right, fair enough. We're almost out of time, but just to wrap it up, looking back to these last 2 years, I think the New York Times said 2012 was the year of the MOOC. 2013, I had the feeling that there was a bit of a backlash. People were saying, especially the funnel, the rates at the end of your classes. What is 2014?
I think 2014 is the year where this technology comes of age and is actually demonstrating the impact that it is able to have in a meaningful way that transcends the hype. We have over 9 million learners and growing, and I think we have demonstrated that our learners are seeing a real impact on their lives, and I think that's really exciting.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You-